A motion in the Parliament calling for the Commonwealth to establish an independent body to have oversight of deaths in custody, deeming it a national shame with Indigenous people overrepresented in the statistics. Ms Davis telling Parliament there's no independent body to investigate deaths in custody and pointed to the recent deaths of 𝐚𝐿𝐼 and 𝐚𝐿𝐼 in the Northern Territory and called on the lack of action in implementing the 339 recommendations of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. Now, Justine wants it taken seriously, excuse me, and wants urgent action. She joins me on the line right now. Good morning, Justine.
Hey, Katie, how you going?
Yeah, really good. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Now, what specifically are you calling for to oversee deaths in custody?
Yeah, so this is actually a really simple motion joining or supporting calls from across Australia and from within the Territory to set up a national oversight body to both set minimum standards for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in custody and set up a robust process to have independent investigations. Exactly as you just said, this is a crisis. There are more than 600 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that have died in the care of the state since the Royal Commission findings. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are 5 times or sometimes 6 times more likely to die in the care of the state than a non-Aboriginal person. The only difference is that they're Aboriginal. And so we have to do whatever we can to address this. The issue of having independent oversight and having robust processes so that we can make sure that we are doing whatever we can to address it, that's all this motion calls for. Very simple, not asking the Territory to do anything different, set up any new processes, put any money into it, just take some leadership. We are in a unique position here. We know these issues very well. We can take some leadership and say to the Commonwealth, you need to step in here and help all of Australia. It's certainly not just an issue for the Territory to address this issue.
Justine, we know that coronial inquests are already mandatory for all deaths in custody. Why do you think that doesn't go far enough?
An inquest is, you're right, an inquest is great. An inquest makes findings, but it doesn't have the power then to do anything with those findings. And it's clear that the systems that we have at the moment are not working because of the statistics that we're seeing. And so we need to do more. We need to do something different. I heard the Chief Minister say in relation to another issue this week that we have a duty of care to the people in our prisons, and that's exactly right. And if this is what's happening, then we need to be doing whatever we can, as I said, to try and address it. And all across Australia, all the human rights organisations and community have called really clearly that this is something that needs to happen. As I said, not just here in the Territory, but across Australia.
In terms of the debate, the discussion that happened yesterday, was there a vote and what happened? Is the Northern Territory government coming to the table on this?
No, the CLP government voted against it. There was some confusion, I think, in the Parliament. Some members of the Chamber suggested that calling for independent investigation somehow meant we don't trust police. That's absolutely not the case. Complete mischaracterisation of what this motion said. In fact, it's really good for police to have robust independent processes. It protects police officers. It provides public confidence. It removes the impossible burden of police investigating their own colleagues in traumatic circumstances. And I've talked to many police who would welcome something like this. So it's certainly not. It's not an anti-police motion, and that was, for anyone who watched the chamber yesterday, you may have seen that was the CLP response. That's not what this motion was about. It was about making sure that we do whatever we can to address this issue.
On that note, Justine, I have got a bit of audio from yesterday. Gerard Maley certainly firing up. Take a listen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise to make my contribution in relation to this. But, Madam Speaker, before I start, I just want to make it very clear that I am completely disgusted and offended by the words Member for Johnston just spoke about police not being trustworthy. My father was a police officer. How dare you say he's not trustworthy? Madam Speaker, Member for Barclay is a police officer. I know he's offended by your words. Are you going to apologise to him? Are you saying he's not trustworthy? How embarrassing.
Member for
disgusting.
Nelson, direct your comments through me, please.
Sorry, Madam Speaker.
I appreciate your
I'm just getting very fired up that how dare she call the police untrustworthy. The police are the first person to run into danger. They're the first person Territorians call when there's a problem. I bet you the member for Johnston's called the police. I bet you one of her friends has called the police, and yet she stands here and says they're not trustworthy. And she used the words police agents of injustice.
Justine, do you believe the police are trustworthy, or did you say yesterday that they are not trustworthy?
Okay, I absolutely did not. I explicitly did not say that, in fact. And I welcome people to go and have a look at Hansard. It's a red herring in relation to the debate. It's not about what the issue was actually about. And I mean, I think the other thing to say is I think if people hear that way of being spoken to in your workplace, that is not appropriate behaviour. That's not what this issue is about. But I mean, just hearing that again, that level of aggression shouted at someone in their workplace is not something that we should be accepting in Parliament. We should be having the highest standards of behaviour. However people feel personally about an issue, and to be attacked like that in Parliament, and I'm certainly not the only person that has happened to, does not in any way set the standard that I think we should be expecting from our parliamentarians.
I'm not a fan of the yelling and some of the carry-on that we have in Parliament, but I do want to ask, did you refer to the police as agents of injustice?
I read out a quote from the National Human Rights Commissioner where he said something. I can pull up the exact quote, but I did not say that myself. No.
I guess the concern is that some may be worried after hearing that and after that part of Gerard Bailey's speech, and I specifically wanted to hear what he had to say because I was interested in the fact that he was yelling, and firing up in that way. But I guess people are going to want to know whether you do have trust in the police or, why that reference of agents of injustice was used.
So the quote which I quoted in my speech was from the Human Rights Commission President, where he said, and I can read out the quote if you want.
Yeah.
Since colonisation, Australian law has too often delivered injustice to First Nations people. Police have often been the agents of this injustice, helping to administer laws and policies like those that enable the stolen generations. When police investigate themselves, it breeds mistrust and increases the risks of poor investigations and lack of accountability. So that's a quote from our National Human Rights Commissioner. I said very explicitly when I spoke yesterday that this is not about individual police. It's not about me trusting the police. I completely agree that the police do an incredible job here. Exactly as Gerard Bailey said. I have a uncle who's a police officer. I have a brother-in-law who's a police officer. Across the territory, we are all, deeply connected. We rely on our police. This is not about attacking the police. That's a total distraction from what this motion was actually about.
Let's go back to the motion. So where to from here? Because I guess if we're in a situation now where you've put this forward, it has gone to a vote, they've voted it down. Where to from here, do you think, Justine?
I know that there is a lot of work being done at a national level about this, and so that's something that, I know there are people here in the Territory who are keen to support that. I think that we need to do, as I said, whatever we can to make sure that everyone who is in the care of the state, we are responsible for them. We need to do whatever we can to address that. And at the moment, there are gaps in that, in many areas across our correction system, as we know. So, in terms of this particular issue, it's something that I will be continuing to have conversations on because it's something that people have come to me saying this is something that's really important to us.
The Human Rights Commission President, 𝐤𝐧𝐭𝐬, said, since colonisation, Australian law has too often delivered injustice for First Nations people, and police have often been the agents of this injustice, helping to administer laws and policies like those that enable the stolen generations. Mistrust continues between First Nations communities and police. When police investigate themselves, it breeds mistrust and increases the risks of poor investigations and lack of accountability. We know that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are dramatically overrepresented in our prisons, in our watchhouses and in deaths in custody. This is not by chance. This is the result of systemic inequality and intergenerational trauma. And we know that legislation plays a role in driving up incarceration rates, including here in the Northern Territory, with soaring imprisonment rates and Aboriginal people dramatically overrepresented. Australia's first formal truth-telling body, the Europe Justice Commission, in its report this year, said the overrepresentation of First Peoples in these systems is not about criminality, but systemic bias, including institutional racism and discriminatory policing. And when we have dramatic overrepresentation here in the NT, with 88% of adults and 95% of children who are locked up are Aboriginal, we dramatically increase the risk of harm and even death.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise to make my contribution in relation to this. But, Madam Speaker, before I start, I just want to make it very clear that I am completely disgusted and offended by the words the member for Johnston just spoke about police not being trustworthy. My father was a police officer. How dare you say he's not trustworthy? Madam Speaker, the member for Barclay is a police officer. I know he's offended by your words. Are you going to apologise to him? Are you saying he's not trustworthy? How embarrassing.
Member for
disgusting.
Nelson, direct your comments through me, please.
Sorry, Madam Speaker.
I appreciate your
I'm just getting very fired up that how dare she call the police untrustworthy. The police are the first person to run into danger. They're the first person Territorians call when there's a problem. I bet you the member for Johnston's called the police. I bet you one of her friends has called the police, and yet she stands here and says they're not trustworthy. And she used the words, police agents of injustice. The police are agents of injustice. That's embarrassing, Madam Speaker. The police do a great job, and I want to say, as I calm down a little bit, that I support the police completely, 100%. I know the people on this side of Parliament support the police 100%. They do a great job. They have had their hands tied by the former Labor government. They haven't been able to do their job properly. And now, Madam Speaker, we've unshackled the police. They're out there doing their job and they're keeping the community safe. Keeping the community safe, Madam Speaker, and that is what Territorians want. Madam Speaker, I know that many people on this side, and I am sure, as I'm standing here, that people have been into the people on the other side's office and say, the community is unsafe. We are out of control. And Madam Speaker, yet the member for Johnston is here calling the police untrustworthy. And Madam Speaker, I hope the police listen to that, and I hope that they hear what she said, and I hope, Madam Speaker, that she sits up there and reads about herself and looks herself in the mirror and goes, gee, I should be embarrassed, because she should be, Madam Speaker. Those words are disgusting, and I'm personally offended by them. Madam Speaker, and again, I've just spoken to the member for Barclay. He is personally offended by them. How dare someone call someone in this chamber untrustworthy, Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, I will just pick up on the behaviour from the Deputy Chief Minister before. I find it quite concerning that
just pause, please, Member for Daly. We're not going to get into this. If people start interjecting, they can. I will remove them from the chamber. There's been a lot of heat in the discussion this afternoon, and I think it's time to tone it down and just be respectful. Member for Daly, you've got the call and you will be heard in complete silence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I was saying, Madam Speaker, I find it completely concerning that the Deputy Chief Minister has come in here and shown his unhinged behaviour towards a Member of Parliament in this chamber. The Deputy Chief Minister comes in here and tries to intimidate, yells, screams, and points at the member for Johnston.
Just pause for a minute. In this chamber, you can yell. You can yell as loud as you want, provided it is directed through the chair and it is within the context of the debate. I'll allow you to continue, but I will exclude the next person who interrupts, because quite frankly, I've had enough of this bad behaviour today.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I was saying, they don't like to hear the truth, because we've just seen the Deputy Chief Minister come in here and lean over his desk to try and intimidate scream and yell and point at the member for Johnston and trying to reflect on her speech, when he could have just put that in his speech in a respectful way, instead of trying to intimidate people in this place. We are supposed to be members of Parliament and leaders in the Northern Territory, and the behaviour we have just seen from the Deputy Chief Minister, I think, is quite concerning and speaks of bigger problems in this place and bigger problems of himself. It is not okay to come in here and intimidate people, and we need to ensure that this is a safe space for everyone to come and speak. And again, they're interjecting because they don't like to hear the truth.
Member for Daly, take a seat. Member for Berkeley, what is your point of order?
Standing Order 35, we're here in general business debating the motion by the member for Johnston. All the member for Daly wants to do is talk about the Deputy Chief Minister. Can he get back on track and talk about the motion?
Independent investigations provide the essential element of impartiality that is missing when police investigate police. Trust in our justice system is deeply limited in many Aboriginal communities. It has been eroded by generations of trauma, colonisation, the stolen generations, and repeated injustice before the law. That mistrust will not heal on its own. It requires accountability, cultural sensitivity, and a willingness to listen to those with lived experience. The CLP claim they are committed to making the Territory a safer place. We ask the CLP to listen to the community, listen to Central Australia, listen to 𝐢𝐬𝐿. They are calling for fairer justice. This is not too much to ask. This is the bare minimum. Territory Labor are committed to better ways to make the Territory safer. Prevention is the key, making the Territory safer for all Territorians. What does that look like? This means investing in long-term solutions that change our systems and services for the better. Deaths in custody are preventable. The Central Land Council have urged the government for measures that will ensure there established an independent police conduct commission. NAJA, who work directly with some of our community's most vulnerable people, believe there is a need for an independent oversight body to deliver true accountability and transparency in cases of police misconduct towards Aboriginal people and to drive structural change to the police forces.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wasn't going to speak this afternoon, but after some of the stuff I've heard here in the chamber, I feel compelled to speak. Because it seems there's a lot of experts on corrections and deaths in custody in this chamber. But I sort of wonder how many people have actually worked in that system and been involved in deaths in custody. And sadly, I can stand here and say that unfortunately I have been. Also, Madam Speaker, I will not stand here and be lectured by the member for Daly on harassment and intimidation. Because those of us who were here in the last Assembly are well aware of the things that took place one evening outside this Parliament House, and for him to come in here and claim that is absolutely hypocritical. But I'll talk about a couple of things here particularly.
Order. No interjections, please.
There was a comment that the police were untrustworthy, and the leader, the deputy leader, got pretty upset about that. And I'll tell you what, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'll be pretty well upset too, because the deputy leader, his father was a police officer, and to come into this chamber and say that police are untrustworthy is, I suppose, absolutely abhorrent. And I also feel for the member for Berkeley, being told that he was untrustworthy because he was also a police officer. It's absolutely disgusting. Our police officers are pillars of our community. They're the people that keep us safe. And of course, there's also an adage for prison officers as well, is they face what you fear. And as the deputy leader specifically stated, our police officers run into danger when everyone else is running away from it. So to call them untrustworthy is completely and utterly disgusting.
So first and foremost, many in our community, particularly many First Nations people in my community and others, now I'm going to get onto this word trust actually that has caused such an issue in the chamber here today. But before I start that, I do want to reiterate some of the things that have been said. The behaviour from the Deputy Chief Minister, once again in this place, the overt aggression, threats and bullying is just so unbecoming of a person in this position, and we're all just fed up with it. I just wish for once that he could act like a grown-up in this place. So when I say trust, this comes from constituents, people who have explicitly said we have lost trust or we distrust. And look, institutions investigating themselves usually, generally, breeds mistrust. In the letter they said, the coroner, quote, formally found what Aboriginal people in the NT have always known, that no one is holding the NT police accountable when they use excessive force and hurt Aboriginal people, and there is entrenched systemic and structural racism within the NT police, end quote. Also in July, the Central Land Council called on the federal government to withhold funding from this government until it establishes an independent police conduct commission into the deaths of 𝐚𝐿. Warren Williams, the CLC chair, said, quote, we don't trust this government and its police force to keep us safe, end quote. I want to unpack what Mr Williams is saying. Mr Williams was highlighting that the NT government gets an enormous amount of funding from the Commonwealth government for closing the gap to improve the lives and well-being of First Nations Territorians. He wants the federal government to stop giving money to the CLP until they establish an independent police conduct commission because he said, and I quote, our lives are worth less than a chocolate bar to those in power and money is the only language they understand, end quote. We know that there is institutional racism within the Northern Territory Police. That was a central finding of Coroner Armitage's report into the death of 𝐚𝐿 released earlier this year. Time and time again, we have seen instances where Aboriginal people in police custody are subjected to neglect and violence that their non-Indigenous counterparts are not subjected to. And too often that neglect and violence results in injury or death. Coroner Armitage was clear in her inquest report that NT Police bears the hallmarks of institutional racism. She said that Zachary Rolfe, who shot and killed 𝐚𝐿, she said, quote, was racist and worked in and benefited from an organisation with the hallmarks of institutional racism. How can the community be expected to trust an institution that bears the hallmarks of institutional racism to investigate deaths that result from that racism? It's just not good enough.
What message does this send to the families of 𝐚𝐿 and 𝐚𝐿? What does it say to the Aboriginal communities across this territory who've been calling for reform for decades? What does it tell the Australian Human Rights Commission when even a simple motion of support is too much for this government?